Hi everyone, this is Alan Rosinski of Metro Manhattan Office Space. Now, it's after Labor Day, and New York City is surprisingly busier. You see a lot of traffic, a lot more people on the streets. I've been showing space. I've been told that occupancy has increased significantly, that many buildings now have 30-40% of their normal traffic. So things are improving in many respects. Now, of course, you still have certain barriers to further improvement, notably the security situation. There's a lot more crime, and you really see it as a resident here. I mean, I've lived in Manhattan for more than 30 years, and it feels like the 1980s and actually somewhat worse. To give you an example, I took a walk a couple of weeks ago to the 9th Avenue International Food Store on 38th and 9th, and I was walking around near Port Authority, and it felt very, very threatening. There were a lot of homeless, a lot of people who seemed kind of dangerous, and I mean, I feel badly for them, but at the same time, I just want the streets to be secure and don't want to feel threatened walking around. And I don't know if I would take that walk again. And I mean, you read it in the news, shootings, assaults, all sorts of petty crimes. And I mean, I find this so unfortunate because it's unnecessary. New York City used to be so safe, and the government has made some major mistakes, like this policy of housing the homeless in hotels, I think has been catastrophic. I mean, you see this on the Upper West Side. The Upper West Side has become kind of dangerous because there's a lot of homeless in the hotels. What's happened is the de Blasio administration had the brilliant idea of signing contracts with the hotels to house the homeless, and apparently they haven't provided a sufficient level of services. So you have homeless walking around in the streets, taking drugs, doing God knows what, and this is all over the city, but I think notably Upper West Side, Garment District, certain areas of Midtown, and it's having a really bad effect in many respects. Like, I've gotten several phone calls from commercial tenants I have placed. I'm thinking of a physician in particular who's on the west side of Manhattan in the 30s who wants to relocate his practice because his patients are very uncomfortable going to his office. And of course, he doesn't want anything to happen to his patients, and he doesn't want his practice impaired by this situation. And it's just so unfortunate because New York had made so much progress with crime. I mean, New York City had a reputation of being ungovernable, that there would always be a crime issue. And I mean, people were very upset by this in the 70s and 80s, and they learned to live with it. I mean, actually, I recall many years ago, there were certain groups, even civilian groups, were set up to fight crime because they did not have confidence in the government's ability to deal with the problem. One individual I'm thinking of in particular is the founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa, who set up his anti-crime group. I think it was in the 1970s, and they would patrol the streets, and it was a volunteer organization. And I think they were somewhat effective. And then what happened when Giuliani came into office, there were a whole set of new policies which were much stricter on crime. I think the theory behind their policies was something called the broken window principle or theory, which meant that if somebody committed a minor infraction, they spit, they broke a window, they jumped a turnstile, these sort of individuals, if they weren't stopped, if they weren't deterred, would be more likely to commit a more serious crime. So once Giuliani was in office, anybody who jumped the turnstile was arrested, broke a window, and it worked. The city within several years became much safer. You had certain areas in the early 90s. I won't walk around in Bryant Park. I won't go in Central Park once night began. And within a few years, it became safe. Now, New York City is a small place. Very high density of people, obviously, and you run into people. And a few days ago, I ran in to Curtis Sliwa in Midtown Manhattan when he was at a food stand and started speaking with him. And he was kind enough to answer several questions on video.
Curtis, it's great to meet you. I've been hearing about you for many, many years. Guardian Angels is patrolling New York at the moment.
Oh yeah, heavy emphasis on the Upper West Side where there have been so many problems, from about 57 up to 110 from Central Park West over to Riverside Park.
Mm-hmm. Have you noticed any improvement in the last few weeks?
There have been improvements because we basically hit the area hard, calmed it down, but the homeless and the emotionally disturbed there have just overwhelmed the system, and the cops are just not responding the way they normally do.
It's amazing that the city would do that with the hotels. I've heard they're housing the homeless in the hotels on the Upper West Side.
About 113 hotels in total in all 5 boroughs that have been used to warehouse homeless and emotionally disturbed. Those services, they're not being treated for their mental problems or their alcohol or drug addiction, and they were getting services in the shelter. There's no reason to move them from the shelters to the hotels.
Well, I guess maybe they wanted to support the hotels, which may have been in danger of going bankrupt, but they could have thought of a better solution.
A lot of them were friends of de Blasio before who wine dined and pocket lined him, so maybe this was a quid pro quo.
I'm sure. I wouldn't be surprised in the least. In any case, everybody in New York City appreciates what you're doing. And it's been great talking with you, and thanks for taking the time.
It's sad when volunteer organizations have to take steps to do the job that the government should be doing. But let's hope that elected officials learn from these mistakes and take steps to improve the security situation. In any event, I have heard that the contracts that the City of New York has signed with the hotels to house the homeless are relatively short term, that they're 6 months. So by the time they expire, it's possible, and let's hope that the city finds another solution so the homeless are not in close proximity with everybody else, and the residents of New York City and commuters to New York do not feel threatened. Also, I want to say that today, September the 11th, it's the 19th anniversary of the horrific terrorist attacks which took place in 2001. I happened to have been in New York City at that time. It was just awful, horrible, worst tragedy in New York City's history until, of course, the current pandemic. But as we did 19 years ago, I'm sure New York City is going to recover, and it'll be a better place eventually. If you have any questions regarding this video, please tweet them to me. My Twitter handle is @MetroManhattan. And of course, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until the next time, take care now.